Since the concept of the attention span is dead in the era of TikToks and YouTube Shorts, let's get one thing straight from the start. I recommend watching Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury. It is an good television. It is very pretty, and the first few episodes notwithstanding, the characters and plot hooks are interesting. Now that we've aligned on that point, dear viewer, Tanuki Lesbians from Outer Space is also problematic, overstuffed with plot threads that would make the second season of Gundam 00 jealous, and wades into a socio-political conversation that I don't think it was prepared to speak to. Now, I'm certain that these opinions will only lead to healthy, wholesome discussion in the comments down below, so here we go. The first 12 episodes of Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury center around the vocational school life of one Soleta Mercury, a bumbling, socially stunted transfer student that just wants to be everyone's friend, and her circumstantial fiancé, Mioran Rembran, who, and let's not beat around the bush here, forces Soleta into courtship so that she can use her to more easily run away from her crappy, filthy rich father. The irony of a show set in a world of evil megacorporations, not lost on Japan's third largest media publisher. Why Soleta is required for this escape plan isn't entirely clear to me, since Mioran seems to have her own entourage already around to help her escape, but maybe it has something to do with the vocational school's draconian way of handling disputes. Through honorable combat. Combat between giant high-tech war machines that teenagers really have no business piloting, other than for the franchise's ever-present merchandising opportunities. Luckily for us, those monuments to plastic model consumerism are rendered in a way that can only be described as well and truly, inarguably brilliant. Every frame of Shark Tank 3 houses is a living, breathing media experience. From the luxurious detail of Mioran's garden, to the sublime fluidity of its mech battles, every scene manages to execute a beautiful fusion of CGI and digital animation without resorting to the stylistic maximalism of shows like Trigun Stampede. Sound effects like beam weapons and whirring servo motors provide an auditory feast wholly unique to Witch from Mercury, while also paying tribute to the soundscapes of series past. But what really sets it apart is even more subtle. Watch this scene, and this, and this. How does the character feel? How do you know? Did they tell you? Did they have to? You know when Soleta is having a panic attack. You know when Mioran is the kind of angry concern your mom is when you hide a report card from her because you don't think it was good enough. Witch from Mercury's use of facial expressions are just as important as any line of the script. A masterful execution of subtext. Show, not tell. This is especially helpful when you're trying to keep track of who is loyal to whom, what Shadiq really wants out of all of this, what companies detest each other, how many body doubles Elan has used this week, what Nina's deal is, the equally whimsical and dark consequences of late-stage capitalism, whether Gyul is a lovable loser or a shitty woman-abusing frat boy, and when the hell Choo-Choo's gonna get sent out on a zombie hunting spree. Mobile Suit Gundam Let the Girls Smooch Once has more plot threads than a Yakuza protagonist has side quests. Because of this, the first 11 episodes-ish of the Tanuki from the Boonies can feel a bit like a slow burn at times. Since there are so many plot threads and so many different things going on, there's not much room for plots B through F to progress, while also keeping the focus squarely on Soleta, Mioran, and their struggles to grow in a world they desperately want to find their place in. Something deeply relatable to the audiences that typically latch onto these shows in these uncertain times, TM. So yes, the show is pretty. the writing is better than decent, and the plot is stuffed to the gills. But it's easy to talk about animation. It's easy to talk about a script, or plot points, or bang-bang shooty mech fights. To ignore the massive Yuri-shaped elephant in the room would be a disservice to myself as a content creator, and to you as my gracious audience. So, pause the video for a moment, check how much runtime is left, and let's talk about the girls. But first, if I may, and disclaimer. I am not an expert on queer relationships in media. I can only speak from my own perspective as a pansexual 30-something in current year, with a non-binary spouse and a host of queer and trans friends. I can only speak as a resident of Texas, one of several states in America actively attempting to snuff out the existence of the LGBT+ community through legislation. Which, unfortunately, is not the exaggeration I wish it was. I can only speak as a person that gives a damn about letting people live their goddamn lives without the threat of persecution, humiliation, or legislative genocide. Hopefully, what I'm about to talk about will resonate with one or two of you, too. At least before you get a chance to flame me in the comments. I've been skeptical of Witch from Mercury's handling of Suletta and Mioran's relationship since the end of Episode 1. Episode 1 introduced Suletta to the idea that being with another woman is okay, actually. Something she clearly hadn't considered with her isolated upbringing. And while her fish-out-of-water reaction to Mioran's clinical proposal is fitting for the character and the overall mood of the first episode, no one should be forced into a situation where they are forced to become someone's life partner, queer or otherwise. Grooming and Stockholm Syndrome, unfortunately, are a thing, and an unfortunate stereotype the queer community deals with regularly. Though Mioran's feelings towards Suletta have clearly changed, from seeing her as merely a pawn to someone she can trust and care about in the episodes since, we've thus far relied on subtext, the thing that this show is really good about, and interpretation to conclude that Suletta is at least considering the option of, quote, more than friends, end quote. There's a lot of time left in the series, but the fact is, we've not seen them take that extra step yet, which, in a vacuum, is perfectly fine. The subtext is there, and the subtext is strong, and the writing thus far seems to be building up to an explicitly queer conclusion. But we have to judge the show on what it is right now, not what it could be. And so far, we have subtext, we have illusions. And for a heteronormative relationship in a Gundam series, these screenwriting tropes are usually enough. This isn't a heteronormative relationship, and it would mean so much to a 13-year-old kid watching on Toonami a few years from now to not need to rely on subtext and illusions just to see two characters of the same gender explicitly fall in love, regardless of the fish-out-of-water plot beat that sparked the conversation. To see them struggle to make a relationship work, maybe even break up. All the issues and growing pains of any relationship, and not have it relegated to an end credit scene or interview confirmation or an easily cut episode just to make it more palatable for more conservative regions. The skepticism I feel comes from years of Sunrise featuring queer-coded caricatures in their top shows while refusing to commit to the bit. Maggie from Gundam Build Fighters, for example, refers to themselves as Oni-san, literally older sister, but also a way for a child to refer to an older woman when introducing themselves to Riku and Yuki, and glows when referred to with feminine pronouns. Yet Bandai takes every opportunity in the first series to accentuate their sculpted ass cheeks, and resorts to toning down their personality considerably in the Re-Rise sequel. Let's go back 10 years to Tiger and Bunny, Sunrise's answer to the Ben Stiller classic Mystery Men, and the character Fire Emblem, whose trademark flamboyant style is often played for a cheap laugh. Over the series, they grow to accept who they are more and more, and the character's growth is lovely to see, actually. But the only official confirmation of their agender identity exists in interview form, in the book Hero TV Fan Volume 2. Even Gundam's greatest rivalry, Amuro Ray and Char Aznable, has queer-coded illusions. Series creator Yoshiyuki Tomino confirmed as much in an interview in November of 1993, for yet another fanbook for Char's counterattack. He says, quote, If I tried to close the curtain on the subject of Char and Amuro, if I had one thing to say about the way I did, is that in order for me to develop as a writer, instead of concluding a war story, that is, yes, 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 I thought it would be good if, maybe, I could highlight the sensuous elements, to the point that you'd think, could Char and Amuro be gay? I think fiction writing is, more than anything, like I just said, about conveying that sensuality, having the audience pick up on it, and if they can't, that's no good. Wiki pages, unofficial interviews, backpedaling. This is where the queer elements of these shows like to live, where it is safe, away from judgmental eyes, offering morsels with the full course fit for consumption by only the most hardcore of anime enthusiasts. Now, to be clear, I do think that what Tomino says has great merit. The mark of strong writing is when the audience can infer details and allow their imagination to fill in the blanks. It creates a unique experience for each viewer, who will interpret details differently through the lens of their own life experiences. But in today's world, I also believe that we could do with a little less subtext. We live in a world where some LGBT people are more afraid than ever to live their truth. It took me well over a decade to accept that I find guys and masculine identifying folks cute sometimes, and even longer to talk about it in the open, because of the relentless bullying and harassment I saw around the subject my entire life. But it goes deeper than that. I feel like we should put like a politics warning on at this point. This is going to get political for a second. The Republican Party of Texas, my home state, has made it abundantly clear in their charter that people like myself, my spouse, and my family are not welcome here as long as they are in charge. That's not even getting into the 12 bills introduced during our current legislative session explicitly designed to limit LGBT-positive medical care, education, and much, much more. Many other states have similar guidance and legislation already passed, and proposed, of course, explicitly designed to legislate LGBT, queer, and gender non-conforming folks out of existence. A fraction of a copy break of research on your own will show you how very not an exaggeration this statement is. Even in the land of anime and video games, it's still not legal nationwide for gay and lesbian couples to marry. Sure, some cities will offer a queer couple a paper slip saying they're cool with it, but the recognition of that certificate is not guaranteed by federal law. Same-sex couples are not allowed to legally adopt in Japan. Lesbian couples are unable to access IVF, or in vitro fertilization, and other techniques of artificial insemination. Outside of Ibaraki and Akita Prefecture, sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected by anti-discrimination laws. And I'm not even going to get into the toxic vitriol coming from a very small but very vocal minority of anime fans on the subject that don't see the irony of spewing hate on Twitter while perusing the female-only tag on certain doujin sites. The global situation is complicated, and as I stated before, I am far from an expert on this subject. But what I do know is that just alluding to Suletta and Mioran's potentially queer relationship in current year cannot be enough. If the remainder of the show dictates that they have feelings for each other, Sunrise, and by extension Bandai, need to put subtext to power and commit to the bit. It may not seem like much to the common cishet audience that likes giant robot fights, but Bandai, one of the largest entertainment companies on the planet, mind you, has a chance to use their highest grossing international franchise to do something radical. To show two people of the same gender living their life and living their truth together. So Sunrise, you made the choice to play in the space of queer representation in media. You now have 4 months to decide what you want to do with it. If these two characters really are an item as you've so heavily telegraphed, continue to show us that struggle. Show us that growth. Show us that truth. While you still can. None of this is to discredit the writing they've done so far, mind you. They've given us a beautiful, imperfect foundation for a growing relationship in this show. But my trust as a viewer has been tested too many times over the years for me not to be skeptical of backpedaling away from the queer baiting and into yet another shunted straight relationship that the producers found more palatable, regardless of whoever is responsible for the story and what they've worked on in the past. I'm not saying that the show's protagonists need to be a perfect, lovey-dovey couple that smooches and eats dilly bars on cute dates every episode. I'm not even saying they have to be gay for the show to be good. But if Sunrise means gay with this show, they need to say gay in a time where it's becoming increasingly difficult, even illegal in some places, looking at you, Florida, to do so. I'm well aware of Ichiro Okuuchi's previous work, but 1998 was a long time ago. And ultimately, Sunrise, and by extension Bandai, has the last word on what does and does not appear in their highest grossing media franchise. And the reality is, when it comes to the bottom line, straight is safe. Gay is a risk. That said, no matter how Mobile Suit Gundam The Witch from Mercury ends, given what happened in the mid-season finale, that perfect, squeaky clean relationship won't be happening anytime soon. We'll talk about episode 12 next time.